later. Okay, so you all are here today for the Florida Statewide Standardized Assessments Information and Updates for Students with Visual Impairments. We have an extraordinary team of Braille and Accessible Assessments specialists from FIMC, Kathy from Husky, Karen Reno, and our newest hire, Tori Short. So welcome, Tori. And with that, I'll hand it over to the experts in this area. So welcome, everyone, and thank you all for coming.
All right, well, Karen and I will be kind of tag teaming this presentation and handing it back and forth. Tori, you want to just pop on real quick and say hi so everybody can see who you are?
Yeah. Oops. There we go. Good morning, everyone. So good to see you all. I'm excited to watch the presentation and learn more about the assessments.
Great. Thanks so much. All right. So this is going to be our Florida Statewide Standardized Assessments Information and Updates for Students with Visual Impairments. And we're kind of shifting to a new way of doing things now that we have Karen and I together. So this webinar is mostly new information that we didn't cover in our other webinars. And we're going to have this January webinar to give any updates, because sometimes things happen after we've given the webinars, or we find things out after we've given the webinars that we want to let you know. So this is an update, and it's going to cover a little bit of stuff about the alternate assessment, and then a lot of stuff about the other assessments as well. All right, so our agenda, we didn't change this. We have the wrong times on. But anyway.
Boy, we sure do.
So instead of PM, this is another new thing, is going to the mornings instead of the afternoons. These were traditionally in the afternoon. But so we're gonna start with welcome and FIMC information, which we already did. Then we're gonna go into the information and updates for students with visual impairments, and close with questions, follow-up, and evaluations, and then adjourn by 10:30, not 3:30.
And we can update this before we post it. Yeah, Tiffany's already updating it, and we'll make sure it's posted correctly. Look, it's changing as she's typing.
Look at that.
I wasn't sure it would do that, so that's why I didn't start typing on it.
And it's one of those, you know, no matter how many times you proofread and review, there's always that one more detail.
I can't believe that. So sorry, folks.
No. Okay. All right, moving on. Materials and the recordings. The link to this recording will be posted on FIMC's past events webpage under the Florida specific meetings and webinars, and we've given you the link for that. Objective is to provide program supervisors and teachers of students with visual impairments an overview of the Florida statewide assessment information specific to students with visual impairments, and assessments related to resources. There is in-service and ACVREP credit available, and so the magic code, you'll need an opening and closing magic code. The opening magic code is Braille. And then how to obtain credit will be explained at the end of the meeting. All right, so important. This webinar should be in addition to the assessment trainings you receive in your district. We are not giving you all the information you need. We are just focusing on the information you need for our students with visual impairments. That's different from what the districts, not contradictory, but different than what the districts are telling you. This information is specific for students with visual impairments having access to the statewide assessment exams and special accommodations. Other topics like waivers, exemptions, schedules, third grade retention, etc., are covered in those district trainings, and you can also find information online at the FDOE website. All right. Just like all fields, we love our acronyms, and we really do need to define them, because sometimes the same letters can stand for different things depending on who you're talking to and what you're doing. So we've got AAC is Alternate Assessment Coordinator, APH, American Printing House for the Blind. BEST is our benchmarks for excellent student thinking. CBT is computer-based testing. DAC is district assessment coordinator. DEI is the data entry interface. DRC is Data Recognition Corporation. ELA is English Language Arts. And in this particular, for this case, it'll be for reading. EOC is End of Course Assessment. The FAA-PT is the Florida Alternate Assessment Performance Task. FAST is the Florida Assessment of Student Thinking. FAST-STAR is the grades K to 2 Florida Assessment of Student Thinking. FCLE is your Florida Civic Literacy Examination. PBT is paper-based testing. SAC is your School Assessment Coordinator. SDE is your School Data Entry. SS is Social Studies. TIDE stands for Test Information Distribution Engine. TN is Transcriber Note. UEB is for Unified English Braille, and then to differentiate the codes for math and science, we have UEB-MS, which is the Unified English Braille Math Science, and we have UEB-N, Unified English Braille with Nemeth. All right, so first we're going to start with an overview of Florida's standardized statewide assessment programs. And please put in the chat, stop me if any of my terminology is unfamiliar, or all the acronyms are on the previous page. You shouldn't have any issues with that. All right, so this is a chart we like to use because it gives you a good overview of the subjects and grade levels that the FAST, FAST-STAR, BEST, Science, and Social Studies test for our general education students. And so for FAST, ELA is reading, and BEST writing are listed separately on the table, and the scores are separate. This is different from the way it used to be, but now that we have FAST and BEST, this is the way it is. And it's different than the FSA used to be. The writing score does not contribute to the overall ELA score. And this is from the 2023 annual assessment meeting, K-12 policy updates. PowerPoint from 9/2023. There is no kindergarten STAR reading because most kindergarten students are taking the STAR early literacy test, which cannot be administered on paper due to the nature of the test. FAST STAR and FAST will be given during PM1, which is fall, PM2, which is winter, and PM3, which is spring. And starting this year, this is new, grade 3 reading will also be offered in the summer. So that's something new that will be coming for this summer, 2025. Science, grades 5 and 8 are given in the spring. The end of course exams, the EOCs, there's civics, biology, US history, algebra, and geometry are offered in the spring, summer, fall, and winter. The FAST reading retake is offered spring, summer, fall, and winter. Any questions about this? No? Okay. Then we have the alternate assessment. And again, this is a nice way to show you the courses and the grade levels that this will pertain to. And notice that it's pretty much exactly the same as the previous one, other than the really lower grades. So ELA in this case for the alternate assessment only includes both reading and writing. And then the writing, just be aware, writing is only grades 4 through 10. Additional information related to the alternate assessment is available on the past events page under the FAA-PT webinar from September 10th. So if you missed that and you want more information about the alternate assessment and a lot of the basic information, you can go back and access and get credit for accessing that event, that the webinar that's recorded. Some additional updates will be included on later slides of new information for that. All right, so the 2024-25 Braille code information. All right, so the Braille codes, we have the Nemeth Braille Code for Mathematics and Science Notation 2022 has now been finalized and published by the Braille Authority of North America. Textbooks as well as assessment materials may appear differently depending on when the material was created. The Braille Authority of North America has the code book at that link, and this is what we call a primary source. So whenever there's a question or whenever you're not sure about something with the Braille codes, go to BANA's website. They have all the code books listed. That's our rules for Braille. So that should always be the first place you check, the rule books and the guidelines. And this may affect what is or is not within the Nemeth switch indicators. That was a lot of the kind of revisions and figuring it out. Then we also got the Guidelines and Standards for Tactile Graphics 2022 finalized and published. The tactile graphics in textbooks as well as assessment materials, again, may appear differently depending on when the material was created, and there's the link for those tactile graphic guidelines. All our tests adhere to these codes as well as the other codes that have been around for a while. So due to the code updates, tests from different years might be formatted differently, but rest assured, everything in an individual test will be formatted the same way. So it's not like they're going to have formatting on question 1 way and formatting on question 10 a different way. No, every test will be formatted the exact same way, but just the way they saw it 3 years ago might be slightly different than what they see in 2 years from now, kind of thing. All right, questions about that? No? All right. Note that using Nemeth symbols versus UEB symbols. So Nemeth symbols will only appear in math and science tests transcribed into UEB with Nemeth. Okay, so if math or science symbols, so such as superscripts and subscript signs, which superscript signs are often in the older grade reading tests, and then negative signs, percent signs, degree signs, they're going to appear in if they appear within a literary context. So if those symbols appear in a reading passage or a passage for the writing, they're going to be presented in UEB symbols, not Nemeth, because the only things that will be done in Nemeth are math and science tests. So therefore, it's vital that students be taught all UEB symbols, even if they're using Nemeth for math and science. They're going to get exposed to it in other places. So they need all the UEB symbols. They need to learn all of UEB. And FIMC presented a webinar titled UEB with Nemeth, Bubbles and Beyond to help people understand when Nemeth or UEB symbols should be used. And the recording of this webinar is available on our past events page on our website. So if you have any questions about that, sometimes it might seem a little different because like if it's just regular numbers, it'll be in UEB even if it's in a Nemeth test. So if there's any confusion, you're not sure, please go to that webinar and that will help you with it. Test structure and implications for students with visual impairments. For additional information related to test structure and Braille formatting, consider watching the webinars. We have the Florida Statewide Assessment for TVI's new to state testing webinar from fall 24 that you can go see, and that gives you a lot of good background information. And then we also did a Braille formats webinar specifically giving you examples and telling you how our standardized state tests are formatted in Braille. So that especially this is good if you have, if you are tasked with giving, creating example material for your students outside of now, Braille examples of all of the practice tests are available for order, and you should get those and your students should practice them. But a lot of districts also give additional practice materials. And if you want to format those additional practice materials on your own, the same way we're formatting the actual test, this webinar will help you know how to do that. Even if you're not an expert in Braille formats. I am not an expert in Braille formats. I am certified as a UEB transcriber, but that's just the beginning of your learning. So we tried to make it as user-friendly as possible. All right. Okay, switching gears a little bit, the access for ELLs. ELL stands for English Language Learner. WIDA testing is a term that refers to the various assessments for English language learners that we use here in Florida. Access for ELLs is the collective name for WIDA's suite of summative English language proficiency assessments. So access for ELL test materials for grades 6 to 12 are available in UEB Math Science and UEB with Nemeth in both contracted and uncontracted form. So those are your offerings for Braille for this assessment. WIDA has developed test administrator scripts and sample items for Braille versions of Access for ELL's paper test. The new scripts and materials are included in the Braille administration kits. All right. Okay, for the alternate assessment, the Braille tactile versions for students with visual impairments. We administer the Braille tactile version if your student uses Braille and/or tactile graphics during daily instruction. For ordering the FAAPT Braille test, the Braille ordering window is currently closed. So if you have someone move in or if something happened and you need a copy that didn't get ordered, you need to contact your AAC, your alternate assessment coordinator, to order Braille after the initial ordering window is closed. This process is unique just to the alternate assessment, the FAA. We are going to talk about ordering the others in a later slide, but this is specific for the alternate assessment of what you do. And available is UEB contracted and uncontracted, UEB Nemeth, both contracted and uncontracted, and UEB Math Science contracted and uncontracted. So for students taking the alternate assessment, who access information via Braille. Okay. And reminder, the versions of Braille ordered should match a student's daily instruction and is available in all of the ones I said. All right. So Braille versions available for 2024-25 FAST, FAST Star, Best, Science, and Social Studies. So these are general education students. FAST Star Reading, FAST ELA Reading, Best Writing, and Social Studies, including the Florida Civic Literacy Exam, FCLE, are available in Unified English Braille contracted and uncontracted. For FAST Star Math, Fast Math, Best Math, and Science, they're available in UEB Math Science contracted and uncontracted, and UEB with Nemeth contracted and uncontracted. All assessments are available in hard copy paper-based Braille, except Star Early Literacy, which does not have Braille due to its format. And we're gonna, in a future slide, we'll address refreshable Braille, okay? Any questions so far before we go next? All right, well then from here, I'm gonna turn it over to Karen.
Okay, so here we go. We are going to talk next about ordering Braille test for the FAST, FAST Star, Best, Science, and Social Studies tests. All right, this is all new information this year. We have not shared this previously. So go ahead. So there may or may not be questions. Feel free. It took us a while to work our way through this concept as well. So hang in there with us, all right? Okay. You ready? Okay. So when you're ordering Braille tests, there are two different ways Braille tests can be ordered. They can be ordered through what's called an initial order or through an additional order. So an initial order needs a pre-ID file that is uploaded to set that student's eligibility prior to the deadline to order materials. And then these orders will be sent automatically for the administrations listed below. So for winter or PM2, they can have initial orders for FAST grades 3 to 10 ELA reading, FAST grades 3 to 10 or 3 to 8 math, the best EOCs, and the FAST reading retake. For spring PM3, they add a few additional options for initial orders. Okay, there's the best writing 4 to 10, the 3 to 10 reading, 3 to 8 math, and then also the statewide science grades 5 and 8, all the EOCs, and the fast reading retake. All right, so those will come automatically if that pre-ID file has been set. Okay, now an additional order is when the DAC places the order in Tide for the materials. All right, nothing is sent automatically to the districts for these administrations listed below. Okay, so you have to make sure that that DAC sends in that order. So for fall PM1, the Fast Star grades K to 2 reading and math, Fast grades 3 to 10 ELA reading, Fast grades 3 to 8 math, the fast reading retake, and all the EOCs are all additional orders. Winter PM2, also you have to still individually order the Fast Star K to 2 reading and math, as well as the science and social studies EOCs. Okay, in the spring, the additional orders are for the Fast Star K to 2 reading and math and the FCLE. All right, and then in the summer, everything is an additional order. All the EOCs, the fast reading retake, and then the new 2025 fast grade 3 reading test. All right, that has to be ordered individually by the DAC. Okay, all right. Okay, so now we're going to talk just about the initial orders. All right, those ones for winter and spring. So the DAC, the District Assessment Coordinator, will mark the student's Braille version under the test indicators in Tide through either a pre-ID upload or they can manually enter it. This will hopefully ensure that the correct version of the test is received and will also allow for DEI entry of the answers as needed once the student has finished taking the test. So the DAC will also upload a paper-based test accommodation spreadsheet to the share file to show a student is eligible for PBT materials. All right, those are 2 different steps. Cambium will then go in and extract those orders or that information from Tide and send that to the DRC and Pearson for creation of orders. All right, so that's how those initial orders are automatically sent. All right, you still need both of those pieces. Now, if there are additional changes, so if there are any changes or new students added to the district with paper-based test accommodations, they need to, the DAC will need to send in an updated PBT accommodation spreadsheet into the share, upload that into the share file. Also, any changes between the initial order deadline and testing, then the DAC may place additional orders in Tide. Okay. And an additional order window opens after districts receive their initial shipments. All right, so a new or updated PBT accommodation spreadsheet needs to be uploaded to show eligibility if there are going to be new orders placed. All right, now remember, this slide just gives an overview of the whole process. All right, as a TVI, it's your job to ensure that the school assessment coordinator and or the district assessment coordinator know what tests your student needs. You don't actually do these other steps yourself. This is just so you have an idea to know what to ask about inside your district. Okay. Okay. Okay, so these are the initial order pre-ID label codes. All right, so these are the letter codes that we're all familiar with and have been using for a long time, and now we know where they go. These are used to indicate or complete the Tide upload pre-ID file or for manual entry into Tide for initial orders. All right, so for fast math, best, and science tests, the districts can designate one letter for the Braille code the student will use for math and science. All right, so C will tell the district or tell the state to order you contracted UEB math science Braille. D will be contracted UEB with Nemeth Braille. U, uncontracted UEB math science Braille, and V is for uncontracted UEB with Nemeth Braille. Okay. For reading, writing, and social studies, including the FCLE, the pre-ID files and assessment websites will accept the following codes. C or D for contracted UEB Braille, and U or V for uncontracted UEB Braille. Okay, so just so you know, the DAC needs both the letter code and the name of the Braille code for each student. All right, because initial order pre-ID labels need the letter to be inputted into the spreadsheet, and additional orders need the name of the Braille code that your student's going to use. Those letters are not included for additional orders. They're only used for initial orders. All right. Okay. All right. Oh, also make sure you work with your school assessment coordinator or your district assessment coordinator, depending on the procedures in your district, to make sure you get the correct codes put in for your student. And then the pre-ID files for winter or PM2 need to be uploaded in September. And for spring or PM3, they need to be uploaded in January to be included in the initial shipments of materials. All right, so it's possible you can still catch it for spring if you go and talk to your school assessment coordinator or district assessment coordinator for spring initial orders. Okay. Okay, so this is another slide that gives you an overview of the process for additional orders. All right, again, this is something that your DAC will do. So you'll make sure to they'll make sure to mark the students' accommodations in Tide, either through a pre-ID or they can manually enter it to ensure that the correct version of the test is received, and then allow you to enter the answers into the DEI. All right, they also will upload a paper-based test accommodation spreadsheet to the share file to show a student is eligible for paper-based materials. All right, then that DAC places the order in Tide for the materials needed. Okay, now for dual media students, you can place additional orders for the secondary format. Okay, so for example, Braille could be ordered through the initial order, either through the pre-ID or manually entered, but in that initial order that's going to automatically ship. And then large print could be an additional order, so that then the student has both versions for testing. All right, so make sure that when the DAC is turning in the paper-based test accommodation spreadsheet, that both formats are listed for that student. Okay, so that they can show that they're eligible for both formats. You definitely will work with your district to determine the process for collecting this information for the DAC. And then if there are any changes or new students that are added to the district with paper-based test accommodations, they'll do the same thing. They will need an updated PBT accommodation spreadsheet, and then that will need to be manually entered into Tide because they will be new, and there won't be an option for the pre-ID label at that time. Okay, so that additional orders is for any extra or changes that come up, any extra tests needed. Okay, are there any questions about that before I move into the next piece? I know that was a lot of information. Okay, all right, well, if it comes up, don't hesitate to write it down and put it in the chat for me. Okay, all right, there are 2 Braille vendors that we use. The American Printing House for the Blind will be producing the Fast Star, Fast, Best, and FAAPT assessments. Okay, their covers are plastic, their bindings are spiral, and their Braille paper weight is lighter. Okay, Pearson Braille Services will be producing the Science and Social Studies tests, including the FCLE. Their covers are paper, they use comb bindings, and their Braille paper weight is a little bit heavier. Now, Tactographics may be produced in different ways, but will still be on thermoform paper. And of course, will be consistent for each test. Okay, now, since the paperweight is lighter for tests produced by APH, make sure you're not putting anything heavy on top of them. as it might flatten the Braille dots a little bit, making it harder for the students to actually read it. These tests should be fine for a single administration though. Okay. All right. Okay, we have a couple of updates for the Florida Alternate Assessment Performance Task. And again, we're just going to say it again. If you need any additional information about the FAAPT assessment, don't hesitate to check out the webinar link here, or reach out if you have any questions. Okay. All right. So first things first, the Braille notes for the FAAPT, which are clipped inside the front cover of each Braille volume, will include additional page break information, also a statement if a large stimulus cutout card has been moved into the response booklet. And it will also include information about additional manipulatives that need to be provided, such as base 10, ones, units, which we usually call cubes, tens, rods, hundreds, flats, and or thousands cubes. Just remember to go and pre-read these Braille notes for those younger grades where these might be needed, because you will need to have enough materials to present the entire task, both the stimulus and the answer choices. So it's imperative that you look at these ahead of time to know how many you will need before you go ahead and start administering the test. And in the Braille notes will also be information related to providing real coins and how many of those you will need as well. This year, very new, we are adding Braille page breaks and combining the stimulus and answer choices on one Braille page for the Algebra 1 EOC only this year, okay? Next year, all the spring 2026 tests will incorporate page breaks. The reason we're doing this is that there's more Braille being provided for every test each year, and we are really attempting to keep each test in one Braille volume. All right, I'm going to show you an example on the next slide. Okay, so anyone familiar with giving the alternate assessment performance task, you can see the stimulus card is at the top where it says the square root of 16, and then you can see in the Braille where it shows the square root of 16 underneath the heading of the page. And then just above the pink line there, then the pink line on both sides shows where the page break would be. And then the answer choice number cards are listed in Braille in box lines. All right, but it'll all be on the same page. So it'll be print page 2 and print page 3, all on Braille page 2. Okay. Okay, all right. All right, we are going to move into assistive technology. This is the next fun section. All right. Okay, so we have been hinting at refreshable Braille, and there is an upcoming Braille pilot that we are very excited about. The option of using refreshable Braille displays with computer-based tests is being explored. Okay, spring 2025, we are conducting a Braille pilot to determine the next steps and how we'll go about considering implementing this. Okay, there are many logistical issues that are being addressed for those TVIs who have elected to participate in the pilot. Some of those are that we are working to provide participants with the necessary software, distributing View Plus Rogue embossers to pilot participants for embossing on-demand Braille and tactile graphics. And also, we introduced Tori before, but we are adding additional personnel to provide training and support to the districts during this rollout. So we're very excited to welcome Tori Short to our assessment team. Okay. And if she wants to pop on, she could. And Tori, if you want, and just say hi again. There she is.
Hi again. If you weren't here earlier, I'm very, very excited about the pilot. So if you guys haven't looked at the information yet, I would definitely check it out. It's going to be really fun.
Awesome. Thank you. So as you can see here, we're also working on a tentative progression. This is certainly possible that it will be updated or changed. But right now, in spring of 25, we're looking to do the Braille pilot. Then we're hoping in the school year 2025-2026 to provide some sample items in that computer-based test format. Then in 2026-2027 to offer some operational CBT Braille tests. All right. The goal overall is to have adaptive Braille assessments so that it's very similar to the way that all the sighted students are taking their tests. So we will see how this goes, and we will certainly keep you updated, but that's where we're headed. But just as a final note, we will still continue to offer paper-based assessments until we are ready to fully say, you know, if that's ever a thing, that they aren't needed anymore. But I don't believe that's where we're headed, right?
No, I think no matter what, just like they realize they are always going to have the option of paper-based assessment, we'll always have the option of hard copy Braille because some students that's appropriate for them. So yes, we are hard copy Braille is not going away. We're just trying to provide another outlet, another way to do it.
Excellent, thank you. All right, so also the use of assistive devices is possible now with your Braille test. There are magnification and electronic Braille devices with storage capabilities and or internet access. Now these will, if you're going to use them on your state assessments, require the use of exam mode, or if your device does not have that, there needs to be a security plan addressing how the features will be managed during testing. That security plan is maintained at a district level and is not submitted to FDOE, all right? There is a really nice comparison chart for available devices at FIMC-VI's Loan Library page that's linked here. And some examples that we are discussing that include, but are not limited to, these magnifiers, the APH Jupiter, APH Mac Connect, VisioBook, Reveal 16, Reveal 16i, and the Cloverbook Pro. Some Braille note takers or displays that students have been using are the Mantis Q40, Chameleon 20, Q Braille XL, Focus 40 Blue, Orbit, Reader 20, Braille Note Touch Plus, or the HIMSS Polaris. All right, and you can find more information about this in the 2024-2025 Statewide Assessments Accommodation Guide. And also just know that these accommodations must be provided as indicated on the student's current IEP or Section 504 plan. All right, you must be very careful to provide the student with only the allowable accommodations permitted for that student. All right, and then in addition, students with disabilities must be provided the opportunity to participate in practice activities for the statewide progress monitoring with their appropriate and allowable accommodations so that they're familiar with how to use these during testing. Okay, and I will hand it back to Kathy for a transcription of answers.
All right, so the transcription of answers. For the transcription of special document responses, okay, so pay careful attention because there's slight differences for each of these, okay? So for FAST STAR, Science, Social Studies, and all the EOCs, for the paper-based regular print, large print, and one item per page, or what we affectionately call OIP, student responses must be entered into the data entry interface, the DEI, okay? So they must be, it's not an option. Or if it's the FAST STAR, it needs to be entered into the Renaissance Growth Platform for K-2, locally at the school or district level, okay? So this is, you have to do it this way. School-based staff need to be assigned the school data entry role in TIDE, the Test Information Distribution Engine. The required procedure is that a staff mentor enters the students' responses into the DEI and another staff member reviews the entries to ensure accuracy. And then additional information for this is in the linked 24-25 Statewide Assessment Accommodations Guide. And just from the reminder, and we've got links later, there's an assessment guide for the older grades, and there's a separate assessment guide for the Fast Star younger grades. Okay. Now, transcription of oral or signed responses for Fast Star, Science, Social Studies, and the EOCs. So a student giving verbal or signed responses for any test format must be entered into the regular print test and response booklet, and then must be entered into the DEI. No options. You have to do it this way. Reminder, oral responses can be listed as an accommodation on an IEP under flexible responding. School district staff need to be assigned the school data entry role in TIDE again, and the same procedure is required where one staff member enters the student's responses into the DEI and a second staff member reviews the entries to ensure accuracy. All right, transcription of Braille answers for Fast Star, Science, Social Studies, and EOCs. So Braille student responses can be entered into the DEI or the Renaissance Growth Platform locally at the school or district level for expedited reporting. So it's not a have to, it's a can. But notice the bold bullet. Answers entered directly into the DEI will have scores reported within 24 hours. Think of that. Usually, if we're lucky, the Braille answers get reported with the regular reporting months later. Or oftentimes, because of when we have to finish so that they have the time they need, it's in late reporting. Within 24 hours, so within the week, you would get the scores. That's huge. So school-based staff would need to be assigned the same school data entry role in TIDE. The required procedure would be the same. A staff member enters the student responses into the DEI and another staff member reviews the entries to ensure accuracy. Materials entered into and this is another important thing to know. So materials entered into the DEI at the local level should be returned as not to be scored, because by you entering those scores into the DEI, it's done. It's already been taken care of. So it doesn't need to be scored again, and that would cause issues because then like the computer's got to figure out, okay, well, you already have scores for this. Why are you sending it to be transcribed by someone else to enter it again? Okay, so please, please, please do send those materials back as not to be scored because it's already been scored by the DEI, by what you've inputted. Responses may be sent to DRC for the Fast Star, and Math EOCs, or Pearson for Science and Social Studies for transcription and DEI entry, but will require additional processing time. So, think of the reality of this. So if you send those in, districts will send them to Pearson or to DRC. DRC will send them to the transcribers who are doing it. The transcribers send it back to Pearson or to DRC and then enter them into the computer, and then their scores are in and can go with the rest of the process. So it really is an advantage if you can enter them locally. Now, I know there's a teacher shortage and that might create issues, but that you can have on the student's IEP an accommodation to be able to give their answers out loud if you don't have someone who could read that Braille. And that would be another way you could be able to put those answers into the regular print document and enter them into the DEI so you can have that student's scores at about the same time their sighted peers are getting them.
Kathy, I have to say we have a comment in the chat that says this has been wonderful for our students as they get their scores alongside their peers. Teachers and parents are very happy, and you can if you can transcribe the Braille, it's well worth it, or use the auditory responding. So yes, it's being done. So thank you, Sydney.
Yes, thank you for letting us know. And yes, if I was a teacher still, there would be no question. It would have to be a really weird, rare exception not to take advantage of this, because this is huge.
Yes.
All right. Transcription of Braille answers for the best writing. Okay, now all different, okay? Writing's different. So Braille test materials, including students' Braille answers, will be returned to DRC, which is the Data Recognition Corporation, to have contractors transcribe the Braille answers into the accompanying print test books. Do not transcribe the best writing Braille answers locally at the district unless the student is giving verbal or signed responses. Do not enter them into the DEI. And I think some of the reasoning behind this is it's a very different process of entering ABCD versus entering all of the information from an actual writing sample. Okay. So, and then Florida statewide assessments, testing window notes. So paper-based versions of computer-based tests may be administered to eligible students during the entire administration window. Okay. There will be an established pickup date prior to the end of the window by which materials must be returned to be included in initial reporting. Okay, this is if you're sending your answers in. Tests returned after the established pickup date will likely be included in late reporting. So they'll be the very last ones of everybody to get their scores. Reminder, if answers are entered directly into the DEI, you'll get those scores in 24 hours. So, all right. Any questions about that? Okay. For yeah, I see that. For dual media order, can a student use CBT for ELA and math and have paper-based for just writing? Best 4th and 5th grade.
I think this is a Leanne question. We had a similar question, Kathy, if you'll remember, and she didn't see a reason why you couldn't, as long as you're not combining on the same test, the computer and paper. Do you remember that?
Yeah, I know we went back and forth a little bit on what we were understanding of this.
They're quite flexible as to what options you can order, and you would be using maybe tied in an additional order. So I would reach out if you have a combination type order like this, just reach out to Leanne and find out exactly what's the best way to do that so that you receive things on time. But they're quite accommodating to make sure that students have what they need. And I definitely think this scenario is a possibility.
And
now the one thing I will say though, I do know what you cannot do is you cannot have a student doing, let's say, the computer-based test with a Braille test, because
Right.
computer-based tests are adaptive, so they would not match.
Right.
So not within the same subject, but different subjects, it's a possibility.
Right. That's right.
And for anyone who needs it, Leanne's contact information is at the end of the PowerPoint, so it will be in here if you need to reach out to her specifically.
Yeah, and Leanne Eldridge is the program specialist for the Department of Education K-12 student assessment accommodations. So that's why we're directing it to her. All right. Yeah, and the length of the test is actually different for Braille too compared to CBT. A few questions shorter. Okay. Any other questions before we move on to additional accommodation information? And thanks, Amanda, for bringing that question up. That was an important question. All right. So additional accommodation information. Oral presentation of Florida statewide assessments. You have the oral presentation guidelines. There's one for the K-2 progress monitoring and one for all of the other tests for the grades 3 to essentially 12. They give instructions and examples of what can and cannot be read aloud on the Florida statewide assessments for reading, writing, math, science, and social studies. Unique accommodation. So in order to be approved for use during testing, a unique accommodation, so if there's something unique that's not a regular accommodation, you need to do this. You need to have it documented on the IEP or Section 504 plan. It needs to be used regularly by the student in the classroom. That's where you start. Used regularly by the student in the classroom. And then not negate the validity or threaten the security of the assessment. Okay, requests must be submitted using the unique accommodations request form provided by FDOE and should be reviewed, approved, and submitted by district assessment coordinators to FDOE. So you are gonna, as a TVI, might help prepare this information, but it's actually gonna be submitted by the district assessment coordinator. The updated forms are sent to the district assessment coordinators each year prior to spring. All right, continuing with unique accommodations, each unique accommodation must be approved every calendar year by the Commissioner of Education or a designee prior to its use. So new requests or resubmissions for unique accommodations must be made 60 days prior to the administration window, and remain in effect for the calendar year it's approved in. Okay, so keep this in mind, because think of this example. If a unique accommodation for a student who's VI was applied for in October 2024, it would remain in effect until the end of 2024. New paperwork would need to be submitted to apply for the unique accommodation for the same student in 2025. So if you applied for it in October before the winter test, they could use it on the winter test, but you would have to reapply again for them to use it on the spring tests. But then once you've applied for it for the spring tests, you're good for fall and winter of the following year until we get to the next January. Accommodations must be provided as indicated on the student's current individual education plan or IEP or 504 plan. Care must be taken to provide a student with only the allowable accommodations permitted for that student. In addition, students with disabilities must be provided the opportunity to participate in practice activities for the statewide progress monitoring activities with appropriate and allowable accommodations. It all boils down to, like, you don't want the student doing this for the first time on the test. This is something that they should be familiar with, and it should be comfortable for them to do because they've done it before, just not with the specific test questions. All right. Unique accommodations, the auditory presentation of passages for students with visual impairments. Now, there is a difference, and so this is just talking about our visually impaired students that for some reason they need the passages presented auditorily. Let's say they just lost their vision and they haven't learned Braille yet, or something in a similar situation. That's what this slide addresses. So this is the first type of eligibility. And the process is for students with severe visual impairment. The students who are severely visually impaired and without tactile or manual abilities, or students who are newly blinded and have not yet learned Braille, or their disability is severe. Their disability severely limits their ability to learn Braille. The students with a progressive loss that have been learning Braille but has a sudden decrease in vision and have not learned enough Braille to read independently yet. And is considered a unique accommodation, must be requested annually. Deadline to submit for spring 25 is January 31st. So you don't have a lot of time if you need to do this now. Passages can be read by text-to-speech or a human reader on computer-based tests, or by a human reader if it's a paper-based test. And if it's a Braille test, it would be a human reader because it'd be a paper-based test. Additional guidelines can be found here. Well, it wouldn't be a Braille test because they wouldn't be using Braille, but anyway, for the paper-based test. Additional guidelines can be found at this link, the request for auditory presentation of ELA passages for students who are visually impaired. This accommodation can be applied for prior to each administration, remember 60 days before, spring, summer, fall, or winter if needed. Now, the second type of eligibility, this is unique accommodation, auditory presentation of passages for those with severe decoding deficiency. This process is for students with a severe decoding deficiency, students who are legitimately non-readers and not students simply reading below grade level. It is considered a unique accommodation, must be requested annually. The deadline to submit for 2025 is January 31st, as again. Passages can be read by text-to-speech or human reader on computer-based tests or a human reader on paper-based tests. Additional guidelines can be found there, and you've got auditory presentation of passages for students with severe decoding deficiency memo. And then you have the guidance document, and then you have the request form. So we gave you as much information about this as we could. This accommodation can only be applied for once a year, with the exception of students new to Florida. So on just this one for the severe decoding deficiency, only one time per year can you apply for this. All right, manipulative information. Well, and let me stop there for any questions about what we covered with unique accommodations.
Kathy, could you go back real quick to the auditory accommodation? Not for decoding, the one prior to that. I think when we were looking at what types of tests and types of reading, I think you may order a Braille test on this if the student is in the process of learning and that's their means of like following along with their reader. So, you know, maybe they don't have the means to read it independently because that's what they're talking about here. Maybe they're following along with graphics, but they're not able to read it independently. So I think that could be a possibility, probably, right?
Okay, yeah, no, that's a good point.
Okay.
Yeah.
And there will always be a paper-based print test in there for the human reader to use.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
On to manipulatives. So operational test manipulatives. And operational meaning these are the real tests, the ones that get graded and the scores are turned in. We pretty much in the testing world, we have what we consider operational, and then we have practice or sample. All right, so it is vitally important that you, as a teacher of the visually impaired, obtain and read through the Braille notes that are packaged with the Braille versions of the assessment before administering the test. The Braille notes are going to alert you to any manipulatives students will need during the test by having a transcriber's note inserted before that question that reads, "Please raise your hand. Your teacher will provide the materials you will need to answer this question." And then for the Fast Star K-2 math Braille notes will now identify how many coins are needed for items involving coins, which are provided by the test administrator. So when it comes to the coins for those lower grades, it's up to the test administrator to provide the coins, and the Braille notes will tell you in advance how many you need, because sometimes it may be multiple. Reminder, Operational tests are statewide assessments that are given 3 times per year and all materials are secure. Sample test materials are provided for students to practice with throughout the year and are not secure materials. Okay. Now, operational test manipulatives continued. For more information. So communication related to manipulatives is located in the following places. And we know historically there's been some issue with the communication and making sure everybody who needs to know about those manipulatives knows. So we have changed how we've done things. This has now been implemented. And so we're doing our best to let everybody know what you need to do with these manipulatives and how the process works. So the Braille notes are being updated for all our tests now to include a specific note to the test administrator that there is a manipulative for an item. So it literally says, test administrator, there's a manipulative for this item. Make sure you've got it. It doesn't say it in those specific words, but that's the general gist. The Braille scripts have been updated with specific directions about manipulatives when there is a manipulative for that test subject. So it won't be in general. There might be one mention in general on the Braille scripts, but for the most part, the information is added if there's a manipulative. FDOE will also be informing the district assessment coordinators about these Braille manipulatives during a monthly DAC meeting prior to the applicable administration. So district assessment coordinators have a monthly meeting with DOE and they give them all this information. And so whenever there's an administration coming up that has a manipulative, they're being told, hey, watch out for this Braille manipulative. It's going to be needed. FIMC also is sending out a notification about manipulatives to the vision contacts and TVIs. So we are also trying to let you know before an administration, hey, there's a manipulative for this grade level, be on the lookout. And there is a resource document about Braille manipulatives on the Florida Statewide Assessments portal for anyone to access. It's the guidelines for administering Braille versions of statewide assessments with manipulatives. And this is a general information document that tells you kind of the whole process of how this gets done, who's doing it, and all of that. All right. So operational test manipulatives continued part 2. Manipulatives required for operational tests will be shipped from FIMC, from us, to your school or district assessment coordinator. Now, where we ship it is wherever the district assessment coordinator tells us to ship it. Essentially, the Department of Education emails the district assessment coordinator, where do you want us to send these? They verify the address, they give us the address, and we send it where they told us to send it. Manipulatives will need to be returned to FIMC. Please return these. Okay, these are considered, because it has to do with information from the test. These are secure things. It's a secure testing material. It needs to be returned to us. A return label will be packaged with the manipulative. So we have gone to having the manipulative with the directions sealed in a Ziploc bag. The return label for that manipulative will be included in that Ziploc bag. Now, if it goes to a district assessment coordinator first, I can't say whether they would take that label out or not, but when we package these, that's where we're putting it. So that the idea, hopefully, is to make it easy for return, and every manipulative has a return label. Do not return these manipulatives to DRC. Don't, and please relay to the district assessment coordinator. These materials do not get turned in with the Braille test. They do not go to the Data Recognition Corporation. They come to us at FIMC. Directions for Braille tests, directions for administering the Braille manipulative is included with the manipulative, as I said, in the Ziploc bag. Check for these materials ahead of time so you don't have issues on test day. I was one. I was having somebody give a test to a student. On the day of testing, I was testing another student. They came knocking, hey, there's something we're supposed to have. We don't have it. That is not a good place to be in. That is not a good thing. So check ahead of time. And that's why we are doing our best to get the word out so you know ahead of time so there's no issues. All right. Operational test manipulatives continued part 3. So upcoming administrations. Currently, the winter 24 PM to 24-25 window is open, and there are manipulatives for this administration for the Fast Star kindergarten math and for the Fast Star grade 1 math. So there are manipulatives needed for those 2 subjects. For spring 25, PM3 24-25, no manipulatives. So you don't have to worry about it for the spring. For summer, we don't know yet. So stay tuned. We will send those communications out. The DOE will send it out to the DACs, and we will send it out to the vision contacts and TVIs. And then same thing for fall 25 PM1, 25-26 and beyond. We'll let you know if there is. All right. And then operational test manipulation continued part 4. There also may be times where students allowed to create their own tactile drawings to assist themselves with answering specific test questions. These instances will be noted in the Braille notes if they're allowed to do this. And the methods used is whatever the student is currently using in the classroom to accomplish tasks, such as plotting points and lines on a coordinate grid. So this method can be the graphic aid for mathematics from APH. It can be the math window. It can be low relief tactile graph sheets with graph benders or feel and peel point symbols and graphic art tape. Those are all APH products. It could be the Draftsman tactile drawing board or tactile doodle. That's also from APH. Could be a geoboard or any other allowable materials. And if you see section E as in Edward, assistive devices and tools on pages 9 and 10 in the 24-25 statewide assessments accommodations guide available on the statewide assessments portal, you'll find information on this. There is a link for this document on the resource slide of this presentation. So at the end there is links. All right, and that brings us to computer-based testing, and I'm going to pass it to Karen.
Okay, here we go. So computer-based tests, any students with visual impairments who will be taking their assessments using the computer-based testing platform should have extensive practice with the online sample items and their accommodations before the test. I know we say that over and over, but it's so important, and especially for these computer-based tests. Okay. All right, so did I miss something? No. All right. Oh, Kathy, you're frozen. Are you there? Can you push it on? Thank you. Okay. So the computer-based test features, all assessments are available computer-based. Paper-based assessment is now considered an accommodation. And obviously we've said this before, it's available for all assessments except Fast Start Early Lit. Now, there are computer-based features for all students. All right, all students can enlarge the print size, use Zoom, set their color contrast, use a line reader or a highlighter. All right, now the enlargement and Zoom accommodations work within the size of the testing window and not the size of the monitor. All right, and remember that unauthorized software will never work within the secure browser. And so far, third-party software will not work within the secure browser yet. The reason it says yet is because of what we are going to tell you next. All right, so new Zoom text can now be used on the FCLE. All right, starting winter 2024, Zoom text can be used in addition to the computer-based features available to all students. So if you have a student taking the FCLE who needs the large print, they can use the magnifier only. They should not use speech through Zoom text because it interferes with the computer-based speech features. All right. So for eligible students, they can use the built-in text-to-speech accommodation. That's what they need to use. Make sure that they have Zoom text on prior to loading the secure browser. And we are suggesting that you teach the Zoom text shortcut commands ahead of test administration. And also to teach the secure browser navigation button layout and icons prior to testing, as that can be a challenge once you make it large enough within your Zoom text to get to those buttons, okay? But it was very exciting to think that we could start to use the software, the Zoom text software within the secure browser. This is a pilot program and could possibly be expanded in the future to include other assessments, okay? So we will keep you updated. All right, next on to calculators. All right, there have not been any changes to the calculator information. Oh, what?
There is a comment
okay.
from
What do we got?
Sydney Keith. We had a few students use Zoom on FCLE and most commented positively on using it. Be sure to have students take an accommodated sample CBT.
Okay, excellent. Yes, make sure they know how to use and access Zoom text within that secure browser. Thank you so much for that comment. Okay, so for calculators, there has not been any changes to the calculator policy. So this is going to be a review for you if you've seen these before. So go ahead. Okay, so grades 3 to 5, no calculators on math or science. Okay, grade 6, you can have on your math test, you can have an approved 4-function calculator. Grades 7 and 8, math, you can have an approved scientific calculator. Grade 8 science can have an approved 4-function calculator. The end of course exams, algebra 1 and geometry can have an approved scientific calculator, and biology 1 can have an approved 4-function calculator. For paper-based tests, handheld calculators must be provided for each student. Okay, handheld calculators may be provided to all students using computer-based tests in addition to the online calculators that appear in both the operational and sample tests. Okay, so they can have calculators. All right. Okay, so please make sure and read the calculator and reference sheet policies for Florida statewide assessments. There's a link to that right there. That's available also on the FDOE portal. All right, so the calculator and reference sheet policies refer to 5 approved calculators and a list of prohibited functionalities. All right, so the calculators on the approved list do not have accessibility options. So locally, you can approve large key or large display or talking calculators that may be provided to students who require them as long as they meet the functionality requirements listed in the policy sheets. All right, now due to functions that are not allowed while taking the FAST and BEST test, the following APH calculators cannot be used: the TI-36X, TI-30XS, TI-34 Plus. And APH is no longer producing these calculators, but we know that a lot of you may still have them in your districts. You just cannot use them on the state test.
Oops.
Okay. Oops. Okay. All right. If the talking 4-function calculator being used does not have all the functions available that are on the regular print 4-function calculator, such as the square root and the positive negative change sign key, then students can direct the test administrator on what buttons to press with the regular print 4-function calculator, and then the test administrator can read the display. This is noted in the Braille scripts for test administrators, and it's also noted in the helpful hints for using the talking calculator in Braille tests for students. If the student is using this method, they must have the accommodation of oral presentation or a reader on their IEP. All right. Now, FIMC has purchased some Florida-specific Sci Plus 2300 talking scientific calculators for use on the Florida assessments that were discussed previously. This policy does not apply for the AP exams, PSAT, SAT, or ACT. Each of these other tests have separate requirements about what type of calculators can be used. But the PSI plus 2300 has been modified to comply with the state of Florida's DOE requirements. Note, when you use this, you must use headphones for speech. And we do have a limited quantity available in the loan library, but you can request them and you can try them out with your student ahead of testing and then use them during testing as well. So just so you know, a college math professor did go through the functions and tested this calculator. In the book that comes with the calculator, there's a line through the trigonometry functions on page 18, making it seem like this has been turned off, however, has not been turned off. It worked and it is needed. So the rest of the markings in the book are correct. So again, we can provide this calculator for testing purposes as it meets the FDOE's requirements. And we definitely recommend ordering it ahead so that you have time to practice with it.
All right, we got one quick question having to do with FCLE. Confirm that Zoom text magnifier is only allowable on FCLE. And at this point, that is the
That's
case.
what I think.
But I'm sure if that changes, DOE will notify everybody and we will pass along any information if that changes.
Yes, yes.
Okay.
Okay, all right, next, please. Okay, so there is something new and exciting. The Desmos online calculators. They are available on the FDOE assessment portal, and they can be used for all the grades and subjects noted in the calculator policy. All right, this is an option for students who utilize a screen reader or screen magnification software. All right, it can be used for both computer-based and paper-based testing. So this is going to be another option for your student. You may need an alternate device to access the Desmos calculator while testing. All right, so that they're not changing the screen that has their secure browser on it. They need a second device, possibly. So the Desmos scientific calculator information about accessing test mode or the app is in the link there. And then the Desmos FDOE online calculators can be accessed through that link and can be used with a test security plan on file in the district. Okay, so it's that similar to that assistive devices that we said, you need that test security plan on file to make sure they're not accessing anything else in the device. The link there contains access to both the 4-function and the scientific calculators. The 4-function calculator, we tried it out ourselves, and the 4-function calculator uses the minus sign to create negative numbers. So there's not a separate plus minus key. So to create that negative number, you push the minus sign and then the number, okay? And the 4-function calculator does include a square root button. So we were very excited about that. So this calculator can be used in conjunction with a human reader if that is a student's accommodation. And definitely, as always, remember to allow the students time to practice to become familiar with using these calculators. There's also a webinar. FIMC did an introduction to Desmos accessibility webinar, and there's a link to that webinar there as well. All right. Oh, I do have the links for the chat here. Hang on, let me drop these guys in here, and then you will have them if you want to. Let's see if that works. So there's the links if you want to go and check those out. All right. Any questions about calculators? No? Okay. All right. Additional test information and updates. These slides should move pretty quick. Okay. Scripts. All right. Scripts for computer-based test and paper-based test accommodations are only available on the Florida Statewide Assessments portal, okay? Braille scripts are included with the Braille test materials kit and are available on the Florida Statewide Assessments portal, okay? So you can go and access your scripts anytime. All right, Fast Math's Best Math EOC reference sheets. So reference sheets are included in the Braille test books as well as in the sample test materials for grades 4 to 8 math, Algebra 1 EOC, and Geometry EOC. There are no separate reference sheet volumes for the math tests. There are tabs placed on the edge of the first page of the reference sheet to help students locate them. All right, here are all of the resources related to accommodations in one place. I know they're throughout the PowerPoint as well, but here they are all together. So here's the 24-25 statewide assessments accommodation guide, the 24-25 K-2 statewide accommodations guide, assessments accommodations guide, and the Florida alternate assessment TAM, or test administrator manual for 24-25. Now, just so you know, these can be updated throughout the year. So make sure you are looking on the website in the portal for the latest versions. If you click these links, it should take you to the latest version because it takes you to an online version of it. So hopefully that works, but it never hurts to go back to the portal and double check and make sure it hasn't been updated.
And it should have a date. If it's been updated, there should
Yes.
be a date in the header or the footer that says when it's updated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Did I miss something? I'm sorry. Hang on the wrong slide. No. Okay. Okay. We also put in here the 2024-2025 assessment information or schedules. So you can click on the FDOE website and find the schedules there. Double check to confirm all testing schedules with your district. The windows are generally quite long, and your district is going to have some specific dates that they would prefer to offer these tests. Also, then here's the general FDOE assessment website for any additional information you might need. All right, I know we've been asking throughout, but any questions? Anybody have anything they want to talk about? Oh,
Yeah. Will the Braille test be delivered prior to the testing window? When delivered after the testing window, it causes stress for our students and families and loss of instructional time. Amanda, are you referencing the alternate assessment, I'm guessing?
or Sarah, it might be Sarah. It says thank you, Sarah.
Oh, Sarah, sorry.
That's okay.
Oh, yeah, I missed it down there. Sorry, Sarah.
No, that's okay. It does say Amanda at the top. So why don't you answer it as if yes,
Okay.
that's what she
All right.
said.
So
no. Oh,
all tests.
no.
Okay.
Oh.
Well, for the general education test, so your FAST, FAST-STAR, BEST, Science, Social Studies, all the EOCs, for the general education students, yes, we get the proofreading done and all that kind of stuff. If you didn't get it prior to the opening of the window, my guess is it would have been some kind of issue with the ordering and stuff. Regarding the alternate assessment performance task Braille copies, we are doing our best to get those ready and shipped to the district by the opening of the window. There has been some logistical issues that have made this a difficult thing to accomplish. One of that being needing more people working on this, hence Karen. So we're hoping this year that we will accomplish that. And it looks like we're on a good trajectory to accomplish that.
Fingers crossed.
So, but what you kind of have to wrap your mind around, okay? So in December, we went to a meeting that was looking at the beginning content of what will be spring of 2026's test for alternate assessment. Then in February, I'll be going to a meeting to look at the passages for the spring 2026 tests. Then in summer, we go to another meeting to review bias for the 2026 tests. And then once they get through all of that, they start creating the actual spring 2026 tests, which we then look at the item reviews and do all our recommendations. And then we have another review after they've looked at our recommendations and made adjustments and finalized things. Then they have to create the tests and we have to proofread the tests. And right now we're in the midst of proofreading all of the spring 2025 tests for alternate assessment now. So we've been working with Pearson and working with the Department of Education alternate assessment specialists to try and get this whole cycle thing, because they can't create until, so the students take the tests for spring 2020, for the spring tests, then they get feedback on how those field test items did, and they have to get all that information back and analyze it before they can start the next year's stuff. So it's a whole cycle, it's a whole process, it's a whole thing. But we're trying to get things scheduled differently so that it moves everything back a few weeks so that we can meet the deadline. So that's kind of a long roundabout answer of, we are doing our best to do that. Ideally, we always want those Braille copies to be in the like in the districts for the testing window. And we're doing our best to do that, but sometimes there are some significant logistical issues that may delay it. So that's about the best I can say. We are doing our best to make sure, and trying our best to do that.
I would also say, just on another side of this, go back to those slides near the beginning of the PowerPoint about ordering, and make sure that whoever is looking for these tests, that you're talking to that school assessment coordinator, that district assessment coordinator, make sure they're ordering it correctly, make sure they're sending in their pre-ID files and their paper-based test eligibility spreadsheets. Try and get all that stuff done ahead of time. Those kinds of things will slow up orders. And then remember, those orders have to come in, and then they have to go out to the schools. So depending on what county you're in, depends on how big it is, as to how long that process takes also. So I would think the earlier you can get with those people about what types of tests they need to be ordering, that could also speed up that process, certainly for your FAST and BEST tests.
And another, yeah, and we had a question from a district about ordering and that kind of thing, and that had us going and investigating how things are ordered. And we discovered there really wasn't anything concrete written down for which was initial orders, which were other orders. So take the slides we've given you. We worked really hard with FDOE to like make sure this is accurate. And yeah, I know, but this is important. So, because your school assessment coordinator or your district assessment coordinator may not have a good handle on this whole process. Share this information with them too, to know, because it might be a situation where they're waiting for things to be automatically shipped in a fall or something, and it isn't going to be until it's ordered. So that may also be some of the issue of the communication and stuff. Okay. Any other questions?
Next slide. Nope, we got to finish it, and then if there are questions, we'll stay.
Okay.
All right, so these are our contacts for accessible assessment questions. Leanne Eldridge is in here for the Department of Education, Bureau of K-12 Student Assessment. She's the Accommodations Program Specialist for General Education. We also included Angie Nathaniel, who is the Program Specialist for the Florida Alternate Assessment. As always, you know Liz Anderson. You can certainly email her, and you can also email Kathy, myself, or Tori with any questions related to assessment. We will, if we don't know the answer, we will do our best to find it out for you. Okay, so those emails are in there. Now, this is very exciting. We want your feedback on your Braille assessments. All right, it is a Microsoft form, and it says, did you give this test? Did you give this test? And you hit yes or no, and it will prompt you with additional questions. If there is anything about these tests that you want to share with us, please do. Please put it in there, all right? These can be quality issues related to the Braille paper, the dots, anything, the thermoform pages, if your students had a hard time reading the graphics, things you liked that you want to see us do more of. There are blank boxes in there. Write whatever you want to write in there. We would love your feedback on this, all right? We updated everything, so there's the QR code, and it is on the FIMC website as well. Okay. And we have moved, I know that's not new news anymore, but just a heads up, if you haven't been in a while, we are now at Monroe Middle on Montgomery Avenue. And you can check out FIMC-VI at our website. You can sign up for the newsletter. And we also have a YouTube channel there as well. Okay. All right, so now for our evaluations. I know Tiffany, she's keeping us on time. All right, so here's your 2 QR codes for your evaluations and your in-service credit. Tiffany, I do not have links for those. If you have links, I will be sure in the future to put them in here, but I don't have the links for that. The closing code is testing for the in-service credit, testing. So when you fill out the in-service credit form, you will get a certificate via email that you can then provide to your district for credit. All right, you can find these on the FIMC website in their forms, upcoming events, and the past events pages. There they are. Yay, thank you, Tiffany. And that is all I have. Now, do we have any more questions? We're more than happy to answer any questions you might have. All right, so there's your in-service credit in the chat and the evaluation. And the closing code is testing. Okay, thank you for your extra few minutes today. If you have what you need, you certainly may get off of the thing, of the webinar. But if you have any extra questions, don't hesitate to email us or feel free to ask it now.